Okay. So yeah, hopefully everyone can hear me okay. And we'll go ahead and get started. Once again, my name is Weston Thomson. I'm a digital artist. Basically means I've been using digital tools, software to create all types of artwork. I got a degree in college in multimedia art. It's a BFA degree where I studied kind of how to use Photoshop and online tools and Adobe suites to make anything from sculpture to digital illustration to concept art and things like that. And I want to start it off today. And I also want to thank DoSpace for having me. It's pretty awesome that we can do this here. Um, so these are the different software programs that I'll be going over today. So you'll first see here Adobe Illustrator is a vector graphics program, and I use that a lot in graphic design and illustration, things like that. I'll also talk about Procreate, which is a raster graphics software that I use for digital illustration. And I've actually done some illustration for DoSpace and some other nonprofits in town. I can show you kind of how I do that. And then I'll talk a little bit about ZBrush, which is a 3D modeling software. Kind of treats a 3D mesh kind of like clay. You can sculpt into the 3D mesh and make really interesting models. And I'll also talk about Google SketchUp. And Google SketchUp is kind of a low barrier of entry 3D modeling program that has allowed me to do lots of really interesting design work. And it's very simple, but really powerful as well. So I'll jump right into some artwork that I've been doing and show you guys kind of what's possible with some of these software programs. Okay, so this is a sculpture I made. I made it for some art collectors locally, and it is made out of wood and cast aluminum. So the face, the hands, and the feet are aluminum, and the rest of the body is made out of wood. And I got the inspiration for this from using some software, from using Illustrator, and a little bit of SketchUp gave me a vision for how to make this thing. And I'm going to walk you through kind of how I put it together from start to finish using the software and kind of showing what's possible with this software. So the first thing, if you look back here at this picture, this is a hollow body. So it's not a solid block of wood. And the first thing I had to do was figure out how to construct this thing so that it was as light as possible, but also took the form of kind of like a full body figurine. It stands about 6'5" tall if it's actually standing up. And this is the program Adobe Illustrator, which maybe some of you have experience with and some of you might not, but I was able to actually take this full figure that you see on the left-hand side here and slice it up like a loaf of bread and design each slice as a piece in vector format. So the image you see on the right-hand side here, all the pieces, there's actually probably more than this that went into the body, but all the pieces that I designed on Illustrator that could be cut out with a laser in wood that I could then put together, kind of sandwiched together to make the full body. And I'll show you kind of how this works a little bit more. So in this kind of this greenish photo, I was just in SketchUp and I was kind of measuring out the thickness of plywood and layering that up to know how many pieces I would need to construct the body for this sculpture. And after that, you can see in the background that those are all the pieces, kind of the outlines of the pieces that I needed cut out of wood. And I notched all the pieces and I labeled them. Excuse me. I labeled them so that I knew which pieces fit together and before I could put the whole body together. Now, before I made a giant one, I made a small one. And you can see here, these are the metal, the metal on the face and the feet and the hands. That's 3D printed steel. And then the body is also made out of little pieces of plywood. And I actually have this guy. Let me show you. I brought this guy here. So yeah, I have one of these little guys here. So you can see kind of proof of concept. So a small version of the large one that I created. And you can see here the feet and the hands. The hands were all 3D printed and the feet were 3D printed, and the face, all that was designed in ZBrush. So I'll go into that a little bit more. And the whole thing is articulated and moves around. So the goal was for the larger object to also be this, to have this articulation and move. So we will get back to the presentation here. So those were the small versions that I made. And then this was kind of the fun part. I had to figure out how to make these hands and feet. And I know that I could have sculpted them out of clay, but I preferred to use a 3D modeling tool. So on the left-hand side, you'll see that this is a ZBrush interface here. And with this program, you can basically pull out and form hands or any kind of shape that you might need. So I worked with the program to model this hand. And after the hand was modeled, I used a 3D printer. I think I used a MakerBot at the time. I think it was a MakerBot Replicator 2 at the time to 3D print the hand and feet pieces. And I couldn't 3D print the whole hand, so I had to do it in sections. And after I printed these, I had to glue the hands together and the feet together to have a full hand and foot. So yeah, this process takes a little bit of time, and there's a lot of things you can do in ZBrush, a lot of textures you can do, but I was just looking for a smooth, simple hand with a little hinge joint on the bottom. So yeah, I sculpted those in ZBrush. And for the face, I created a face out of clay, and this is sculptor's clay. It's like plasticine clay. It's kind of a hard, firm clay. You can get it warm and it will become really malleable. And then as soon as it cools off, it becomes a little bit harder. So you can actually sculpt onto it when it's done. But I created this and I took the hands and the face that were all completed and I brought them down to a local sculptor named Les Bruning. He runs a Bruning sculpture out of the hot shops. And he was able to take the clay face and the 3D printed hands and feet and create wax molds of those. And the wax mold of the face you can see on the right-hand side here. Once it's in a wax form, then you can turn that wax form into bronze or aluminum, things like that. So in this frame, you can see here on the left-hand side, I have the feet and the hands that are turned into the wax versions after the molds were made. And then on the right-hand side, these are actually the aluminum casts. So those are all metal, aluminum. And then we used an India ink, just an India ink to do kind of a patina. So you'd rub ink into the aluminum and then wipe it off, and it would kind of give it that darker tones on the insides of those. So yeah, and you can see that little tiny figurine kind of behind the hands up there, just to give you guys an idea of size. So yeah, so basically 3D design using ZBrush for the hands, printing them out on a 3D printer, and then having those pieces cast into wax, and then having the wax turned into aluminum. So that was kind of a process, and I had to get all the sizes right and make sure everything fit. So the pieces I designed in Illustrator, I had them laser cut, and the edges are burnt here because the laser will burn the wood as it cuts through. But these are each of the pieces that I formed together and glued them together. And then on the right-hand side, you can see the main body being kind of, I sanded it all down, and we were able to put like a sheen on it too, like a protective coating on it as well. And on the right-hand side, you can see kind of the aluminum face installed inside of it and having it all still glued together and clamped down. And on the left-hand side, you can see me trying to kind of get the full figure put together to see if everything lined up and if it would work correctly. So it was a really long process to get to this point, but like I said, used Illustrator to get all the pieces cut out to sandwich them together, and then use ZBrush to get the molds for the face, hands, and feet figured out. And the fun part was transporting this, this guy. I don't have a large car, so I had to put him in the back, kind of face down there. It's one of my favorite shots. But yeah, so, and there he is kind of downstairs in my basement too, hanging out while I was getting ready to put everything together on him. And you can see that the joints are all there, the hands move and the legs move and everything kind of moves. And yeah, and it's all kind of put together. So that was the journey for this sculpture, using these tools, these digital tools to get there. So you can kind of see how the original sketch was laid out, and in Illustrator, literally creating the pieces that were cut out of wood on a laser cutter. And I believe I used a local company called Material Design for that, to get the pieces that were large scale. DoSpace does have a laser cutter, and I could make the smaller version. I could make these guys at DoSpace if I wanted to, but the bigger pieces, I need to go get a substantial kind of industrial size laser cutter for those. So yeah, so that's kind of a combination of a lot of different art forms together, but you can get a sculptural form out of a 2D software like Illustrator, which is really great. These next series of pieces I'll talk about involve, again, the use of Adobe Illustrator, the use of a laser cutter, and then acrylic paint on top of both those things. And in this main image right here, you can see this kind of a totem design that I was working on here on the left-hand side. That's all done in Illustrator. Basically just using the line tool to create the different forms that would piece together to create these faces, and then just mirroring those vector lines, and then joining them together in the middle to give you kind of this symmetrical design. So this is just a snapshot I have from the Illustrator software, basically showing these kind of outlined designs that I designed in it. And there's basically using the pen tool and your line stroke, your outline stroke, you can kind of piece together and draw little segments, join them together, and create illustrations like this. And you can do a lot more than this in Illustrator. This is just the type of work I was interested in at the time. And so this is just a snapshot of those files in the software. Now, in order to have anything actually laser cut on a laser cutter, generally there needs to be an outline that is in a different color than your design. So on the left-hand side, you'll see a red outline, and I believe at DoSpace, you need to set a 100% red line for the laser to recognize where to cut. So you can see on the left-hand side here, I had that red line, and then I have the rest of the inside as black, and the laser cutter will also engrave the black into the surface of the wood. So what you're seeing is a file that can be completely cut out of a piece of wood, but also engraved burnt designs into the wood as well. So you get a cutout shape that has guidelines. And I would do these, get them printed out, get them cut out of wood on laser cutter, and then I would hand paint those. So these are a couple of those designs that I designed in Illustrator. And after they were cut out of wood, I think I used a quarter inch pieces of plywood with really deep engraving in there. After they were cut out, I would just sit down and I would prime them and I would paint them by hand. And you can get some really interesting looking effects this way. Sometimes it even kind of looks a little bit computer generated or computer colored, but these are probably about 2 feet tall by about 2 feet wide, and they just hang on the wall like art pieces. And I think I have a couple of these down at Curbside Clothing down in the Old Market as well. If you're ever out there when things get back to normal, you can come check them out down there. But again, kind of a jump from using Illustrator to design something and then having it kind of be put into the material world, 3D world afterwards. Here's another image I did in the same series. You can see the Illustrator, the vector line design on the left-hand side. And that was, I was looking at the Pacific Northwest culture a lot. I was studying their artwork and got inspired to do kind of my own piece in that style, just studying it and trying to figure out how it works and how it's balanced. And this is all laser cut out and then engraved, and then I painted the surface of it. And then all these little paddles here on the outside are hinged so they can move in and out, and you can kind of cover the face up with them or open the face up with that. That's probably about 3 feet wide by 2 feet tall on that one. So this is kind of a more of an in-depth slide showing the use of a laser cutter / engraver, and we're actually putting a design onto a skateboard here. And you can see the design I made in the lower left-hand side that I made in Illustrator, kind of using the same motif, the totem motif that I was working with. And you know, we're measuring it out on the skateboard, making sure it's all going to fit, and making sure it's centered. And then you can see on the right-hand side that that's just all that coloring is just burnt wood on the skateboard. So yeah, you can actually do a lot of really interesting values just by using different levels of gray and black in your Illustrator design, and that can be burnt into the wood and make some really interesting effects. So there's a good example of kind of how that could look on a skateboard. This is another type of way to get a design out. So left-hand side, there's a scarab type of design. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see this is actually a sheet of aluminum that was cut out. So the vector design turned into a piece of aluminum, cut out aluminum instead of wood. And I had to go to I think it was a sheet metal company, and I forget where it was. This was quite a few years back, but they were able to take my vector design and then have their machine cut it out in aluminum. So it had this like tangible metal sculpture when I was done, just from a line drawing. So these are all applications that you can kind of extract from using Illustrator and vector software, just from working with line drawings and having it in a format that computers can understand. So yeah, and then this one in the first hand slide here was, I think, was about a 4 foot wood cutout that I hand painted as well. Okay, so back to using ZBrush, a 3D modeling software. You can also use 3D modeling software to create jewelry. So this is kind of something I just dabbled in a little bit, but was able to get some pretty good results. So these are just 3D models of rings and pendants that I was playing with in ZBrush. And basically anything that you can sculpt in ZBrush within a reasonable size, you can get printed in wax, and you can do lost wax casting. So basically, they have printers, 3D printers that print only in wax. You can also take a plastic piece that you've printed on a 3D printer, either in PLA or ABS, and you can have a wax cast made of that. I maybe have to check on this, but I think PLA itself can be burnt out with metal. I think PLA might act as wax as well, but anyway, you can do some really interesting things with this. So these were all just things that I sculpted on my computer, and then either ordered through a company called Shapeways, or there's other companies that will take your 3D models and turn them into metal prints or silver or gold or any of that stuff. So here's some examples. So on the left-hand side, you'll see some rings here that I had 3D printed in silver, like 100% silver. And then on the right-hand side, you'll see a pendant here as well that's also printed in silver. And then in the middle, this was actually my engagement ring that I designed for my fiance. And that actually, I had that printed in a wax, and it was cast in gold. So that's kind of just showing you that you can create these things digitally and have them actually become tangible objects in real life. And so these are this is the ring right here. I think it turned out really well. And once you have the ring, you could also do sandblasting on it and do some other effects to give it kind of a matte finish or a really high polish finish. You can embed stones in it. You can do lots of fun things. And so whatever you can really imagine in the 3D software, you could actually create. And I have a couple rings I'll show you on the video here. So let's see. So this one, if you can tell, but it has a whole bunch of layers, and it's actually hollow. And this was a 3D designed, a 3D printed in silver. This one also. So taking some of the same kind of techniques that I was using and some of my 2D design and getting it printed out in a ring. A couple other ones here. Kind of hard. They're kind of hard to see on the camera, but yeah. So lots of potential. Jewelry making, lots of fun things you can do with all these tools. Let me jump back into the presentation here. Oh, looks like I have a question. I didn't even see that. Where did you 3D print the face? Yeah, so that face was actually, I created that face out of, I'm sorry, I didn't get to this. That was a long time ago. I created that face for the small versions for this guy right here. These were created on ZBrush and then printed at Shapeways. So Shapeways is an online 3D printing service. And you can upload your models and you can tell them if you want them in steel or if you want them in plastic or sandstone, different materials. And so these turned out actually really, really well. And you can, after you get them, you can actually polish them even more to get some of those 3D printing textures out. But they also, sometimes they look kind of nice and you might want to keep them. So that's where I got that. Sorry, I didn't see that question earlier. I apologize. Okay, get rid of that. All right, so yeah, so jewelry, totally cool. Never thought I would be able to make jewelry before, but 3D printing and 3D modeling helped me kind of break into that that creative outlet that I never would have before. So really kind of excited. You can do a lot of really fun stuff with it. So a little bit more about ZBrush. I had an art show, I think back in 2012 called Future Artifacts. And this is, I made a whole bunch of these kind of, these artifacts that I had kind of narrated that would have been found in the future. And they were inspired a lot on the artifacts from the Bronze Age. So this is a kind of a mask that I created, and I sculpted it in ZBrush. And I have a couple different visuals of on the left-hand side. So in ZBrush, you can start with like a sphere, and you can kind of push and pull that sphere and make indentations and cuts and pull things out. And eventually, you can kind of really do whatever you want. There's some amazing things that have happened. Oops. And on the right-hand side, you'll see there is a 3D printed plastic version of this mask. And it's really, all the texture and all the details were captured perfectly. And I was able to, I painted it white, and I also added, I 3D printed some steel bells to hang off here. And I had a friend who had a horse that gave me some horsehair that I used for these little things on the side here. So it's really, there's a really huge gamut of things you can do with this software. Here's some more things. Also, most of these are also printed, I think, from Shapeways. And this thing on the left-hand side here, this is 3D printed steel with gold plating, and then also laser cut wood in the middle here. And then I just used some leather tools to create these straps. And the face down here at the bottom is hollow, but it is it's a steel head with some bells on it and stuff like that. So kind of inspired by an amulet or something that you would find. And yeah, but all using 3D design, using ZBrush and getting this 3D printed. And then this is like a jaguar head on the right-hand side that's printed in steel as well. And I have a close-up here. You can kind of see some of those printing lines, but like I said, if you polish it with a Dremel tool, you can have a kind of a smooth finish if you'd like on some of this stuff. This is an example. This is another kind of one of my totem pieces here. This is 3D printed plastic as well. And then this is hand painted. So you can see on the left-hand side that I did a kind of a burnt sienna coating of acrylic. And then I went on top of that with acrylic paint and kind of painted this whole 3D print. It took me a long time, but it looked really great when it was done. And you know, again, something that would have taken a lot longer maybe to sculpt it by hand. But kind of getting that realism from the computer out into 3D space, onto reality was kind of really great for that. I do have, oh, and then here is a 3D model created in ZBrush on the left-hand side. And you can also color your models. I don't always do it because I don't always print in 3D color, but this is a color model on the left, and then this is the color 3D print on the right-hand side. And that 3D print is printed in colored sandstone, and it's hollow. And I do have that to show you guys as well. Let me grab that. Where is it? Here it is. So this is that 3D printed head. One of my characters for my paintings, I decided to design it. It's hollow, so you can see inside. And it does have like a sand finish on it because it is made out of sandstone. They have some other types of 3D prints you can order. I think now, this was back in 2011, but they've come a long way with this stuff, and you can get more plastic 3D prints. But for a color 3D print, it's pretty great, and it really matched what I was trying to do in my paintings, and I was able to get it out in 3 dimensions on here. So I was really stoked about that. Okay. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about SketchUp now. Like I said, SketchUp is kind of like a user-friendly entry-level 3-dimensional 3D modeling software / computer-aided design software. And I haven't made like huge, you know, city-scale type models of too much stuff, but I did get really interested in it just from a sculptural standpoint as an artist. And what I did was I was able to create just a whole bunch of what I would consider building blocks, 3D building blocks in SketchUp, and then I was able to create shapes out of those building blocks. So one of my projects that I created in Google SketchUp was actually called Shapes. And this was a series of kind of deconstructed cubes that you could put together and create different types of forms. So I'll show you what I mean here in a second. So the goal of this project was to create these individual building blocks that I could put together in different ways to create different types of things. So this is kind of just a couple of examples. In SketchUp, you can create a box, a cube very easily. And if you stack cubes in different types of shapes in different ways, there's an example of a face here on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, I have this bird on the top, and you can see underneath that bird, or what looks like a bird a little bit, the different amounts of the blocks underneath it that it takes to make that bird. So it was a way to kind of like get back to polygons and primitive shapes and create these kind of like rough, almost like really like low res 3-dimensional forms. But it was really fun, and there's lots of different things you could do with this. So this is all just done in SketchUp. And here are some 3D printed versions of that project. So in this case, I was able to print out individual pieces in 3 dimensions. and I had pegs and holes that they could snap together in, and I could create any kind of three-dimensional composition using these things. And really, you can kind of put them together in all different ways. It's kind of like a three-dimensional puzzle. And actually, I do have some of these I can show you guys as well. Here's just a snapshot of SketchUp. And these are some different combinations of those shapes that I would put together to create different pieces. And so, so from here, from SketchUp, you can take these models and you can also 3D print these models. And then if you want to, from there, you can get those cast and, you know, in any kind of material you'd like. You could get them cast in acrylic, like a thick acrylic or bronze, or just leave them as plastic 3D prints as well. Totally fine. I decided to take one of them and turn it into a bronze sculpture. So you'll see here on the left-hand side, I have just a shot showing the individual pieces that I sculpted in SketchUp, putting them together in a solid composition. And then in the image on the right, there is a plastic 3D print, which is an ABS plastic on the right-hand side. That's the white one. And then on the left-hand side, you see the cast bronze version there. So that's polished bronze, so that it has that sheen to it. You can also put patina on these things and kind of make them look a little rustic. But that's a kind of a step-by-step from SketchUp to bronze, what's possible there, which is kind of fun. So you can see, you know, I tried to do a lot of different combinations, and I actually do have some of those I can show you here too. So let me get out of this. Go back here. So let me see here. So this is one of those compositions with the 3D printed shapes. And it took a lot of time to kind of get the sizes just right, but everything snaps together and you can make tons of different types of compositions. And then from a shape like this, you can have a 3D model that's printed from that that is more smooth. And I took out all the different, so all the shapes put together can make one big object. And so this object right here is a 3D print of the shapes put together as one piece. So lots of cool stuff there to play with. And then the bronze version, here's a bronze patinaed version of one of those shapes compositions. So you can kind of see, it's a nice paperweight, it's kind of heavy, but totally cool to actually hold something you've designed in SketchUp and see it in real life. So pretty fun thing. I also have this guy out here too. So this guy was designed in ZBrush. It's in a ZBrush guy, and you can see I've polished it with a Dremel, so you get rid of some of those 3D printing lines and kind of bring it more into a traditional looking sculpture made out of clay, I guess, originally. So yeah, really, really kind of fun stuff you can do with ZBrush software. I'll also share this guy. So this I also made. This is using a different software. Let me see, I think it's called, it's not Mesh Mixer. It was a free downloadable software that will help you do math models. And they're still really kind of hard to make, but I actually have this printed at DoSpace. So this is a DoSpace print from one of their 3D printers there. So it dropped off the file and they printed it, and it's all actually connected as one piece of plastic. So all those stars actually connect and it's one big piece together. This right here is also a 3D print, but this is wood filament. So this is something that it's basically sawdust with kind of a plastic binder, and it'll come out of a 3D printer. And I tried to make this look like it was kind of like a wooden, like 2x4 that was bent around to kind of give it that unique 3D printing feel. But this is wood. You can sand it. You can use wood glue on it and do lots of interesting things with it. All right. If you're still with me, thank you for hanging out this long. Um, so I'm going to talk about Procreate right now. So this is the last thing I'll talk about today. But Procreate is a raster graphics software, and I use it on the iPad. You can use it on an iPad or iPad Pro, which DoSpace does have iPads with Procreate, so you can mess around there. But this is some stuff. I use this for digital illustration. I use this for if I'm hired by a client to create some kind of a graphic or illustration. This is what I go to. And I usually try to design it in a way that can transfer easily to being vector as well. So this is a good example. This was a kind of a holiday card, a graphic I designed for DoSpace, and this is all done on iPad. Sorry, in Procreate on the iPad. Here's a kind of an architectural drawing using that same software. So this is also done in Procreate. So using kind of a photo of the building of DoSpace, tracing over it, and then kind of adding digital effects to it, like halftone and things like that. Kind of just give you an idea of the range that's possible with this software. It's pretty amazing, and it looks really great. And it helps you draw with the actual pen on the iPad, which is wonderful. Here are some more images that I did just using Procreate on the iPad with the Apple Pencil. And I actually have a video here of how I got to this picture on the right-hand side over here. And I'll show you. This is just a time lapse showing how I traced over the image and then added color and graphics. So I'll play that for you guys now. So what you're seeing is just using a regular kind of ink pen, digital pen there on the iPad, tracing over, choosing kind of where to place lines and where not to place lines. And once you get kind of an outline of where you want to go with it, then you can start adding color and filling in. But the first step is kind of getting that black outline down. I was going for kind of a comic book feel. So that's kind of where I was headed with the illustration. And it's all about adding details and little things to kind of make it pop out. So you can see adding all the background layers, the colors, adding some shadows, some outlines, things like that to make it pop. So that's kind of how that started off. So you can see that you can take a photo using Procreate in your Apple Pencil and really just take that photo and turn it into a piece of illustration fairly easily and pretty straightforward using that software. So kind of just wanted to show you guys a little time lapse of how that worked. So again, yeah, huge potential for the program Procreate on the iPad. Procreate is also free, so that's a real big bonus. Of course, you have to have the iPad, which is not free, to use it. But the fact that it's a free software and you have so many tools in it, it's a really great alternative to drawing in Photoshop. There are better software applications out there for 2D graphics and raster, but Procreate really, in my mind, has really kind of made it really simple and very powerful to create 2D graphics. I really recommend it. Okay, the last thing I'll talk about today is something else I've been working on lately. I've just created a graphic novel, which it was a huge project for me. It's taken 3 years. It's 150 pages. There's about 500 drawn frames, so basically 500 drawings in it, and it was only really possible for me to do this with Procreate on the iPad. It made it straightforward. I could sit down and kind of draw whenever, and it really was a huge project, and it handled it really well. So this is like a screenshot of Procreate. Looks a lot like Photoshop. This is just the color windows open here. I was just using black and white, but I kind of wanted to show you guys just the shot of kind of your selection tools for hue, saturation, and brightness, and kind of just how it looked. So Here's another shot here of one of the other illustrations for the graphic novel. And if anybody who's ever drawn a miniature comic, or if you've actually done a graphic novel yourself, it is a really long process, of writing the story and creating the pages and compositions, and then deciding kind of what style you might want to render the whole novel in. And I was really interested in black and white at the time, and kind of just worked with that and used Procreate to figure out how to really push that black and white style. And I used a whole bunch of kind of these halftone screen patterns to create the illusion of different values. It really all is just black and white. Just the dots and the halftone patterns create the illusion that there are multiple values in there. And I also had to create some of my own brushes to get the effects that I wanted to. So you'll see the stars in the background. That's just a brush that I created that would allow me to draw lots of stars at once instead of having to do individual dots. So yeah, lots of kind of things that you learn along the way. But this was a huge project, and I have just a short video that just describes a little bit of my process and shows a little bit of the drawing as it happens.
For me, illustration is all about problem solving. I'm constantly working down problems in my art, from the big initial vision down to the minute details of a drawing, until I can't find any more problems to solve. As an artist, you have to come to love this process. And most importantly, you have to trust that you can work through any problems that arise when your ambition challenges your ability. Working through hundreds of drawings for a graphic novel has really made this process apparent. But I've also learned that you have to leave room for discovery, because there are all kinds of wonderful things that reveal themselves when you try to solve problems. And as an artist, you need to be able to see them when they happen.
So I had a couple of time lapses in there. You can see the drawings kind of come to life as you work. One thing great about Procreate is you can turn on that feature to do a time lapse of your work. So as you're drawing, this thing is on in the background recording all your brush strokes, and you can watch it at the end, which gives you another kind of level of insight into your own work, and allows you to kind of see, and allows your audience to see, how you construct an image from nothing. So this is just a screenshot here of the page spreads in a PDF format. I'm using Adobe Acrobat for that. Once you have all your images done, you want to lay them out in a book format, and kind of just see how it flows. And there's actually a lot of really interesting print-on-demand services that you can order just one book fully done, and they'll send it to you, and you can kind of see how that works. And I'll show you some of those in a second. But yeah, laying out these spreads, getting everything to look right, was all done in it's all done in Procreate, which is a free program. So Procreate is a raster program, which basically means it's pixel based. So when you're drawing in Procreate, you're basically coloring a whole bunch of little tiny squares, little pixels. And if you zoom in on these graphics, you'll notice the pixelization, right? So you'll see kind of some rough edges. You'll see almost like a seesaw pattern on the edge of these things. And that's totally fine as long as your resolution is high enough when you're drawing. It usually doesn't become a problem unless you want to blow your artwork up to a really large scale. When I was creating all the artwork for the graphic novel, I created it with the plan to vectorize the graphics later. So I did some tests in the beginning to see kind of how thick my lines had to be, if the halftone pattern would work into a vectorization. And so I'll show you kind of what I mean by vectorization. So this is the bitmap image that I brought into Illustrator. So I drew it in Procreate, I brought it into Illustrator, and then I did what's called image trace. This is something that's been around for a long time, but you can see on the left-hand side now how clean the lines are on the image. And this graphic now I can blow up to whatever size I want. It will not lose any resolution. So, even though the artwork for the graphic novel is going to be in like a 6:9 book, I still wanted to have those graphics be scalable in case I wanted to make a poster, or in case I wanted to make something large scale, or some window vinyl with it. And so using that image trace option in Illustrator puts it in this format. And this format also creates the opportunity for extended use for laser cutters or any other kind of maybe uh, printing techniques that I want to do later. So really keeping in mind that what you're drawing in a raster program like Procreate, keeping in mind that you might want to use that later for something else, you want to make sure that you can vectorize that and it will still look nice. So that was kind of one of my tests. This is the before and after. Vectorization just changed things a little bit, but there's lots of different settings that you can adjust to make it either exactly like your bitmap graphic, where you can actually see pixels, or just smooth it out a little bit. So I created my own custom profile for image tracing for the whole graphic novel and was using that to transfer everything into vector format. And here's the book. It's going to be coming out, I think, probably the end of this month, January. Yeah, so it's called System, and like I said, 150 pages, lots of illustrations, all designed and created in Procreate and then processed later in Adobe Illustrator. And this is a book here that I had printed as a demo, and I believe I got this print from Blurb. So Blurb is a print-on-demand service, but Amazon also has a print-on-demand service called Kindle Direct Publishing. That's KDP, and I've also gotten a couple samples from them as well. And they all have different paper choices and different printing styles and different levels of kind of quality that you can go to. So I recommend that trying one of those out and seeing if you can, seeing what it looks like. There might also be some local printers too that might be able to put together a book for you as well if you have a PDF ready for them. But this was kind of just a test for me, and it really turned out well. Here are the print-on-demand services that I was mentioning. So Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing, and a lot of these places can also do ebooks and digital PDFs of your work as well. So you can get it printed in an actual physical book, or you can or you can get it printed. Just set up as an ebook. So Amazon KDP, Ingram Spark, Barnes and Noble actually has their own print-on-demand service as well. So they will actually print a book and send it to you as well, and it can be available in their store. Blurb, like I mentioned before, Lulu is another one. There's a whole bunch of them out there, and they all charge different kind of amounts for the book. Some of them take 40%, 50%, depending on what kind of distribution you want with your book with them. But it's really cool, the fact that you can take a free software like Procreate, put in some time and energy, and then you can create a book, and you can get your book printed and sent to you, or you can order lots of copies, or you can even put it on Amazon, or have it show up in Barnes and Noble. You can make it available to libraries and schools. It's really awesome what's possible now, and all these tools help the process of creation go a lot smoother and more quickly than ever before. So yeah, those are some great resources to look into. And yeah, that's kind of my spiel. I have a couple of things I can show you here real quick. Okay, so this is one of those books here, and this one was actually from the Amazon KDP, and you'll see they have a not for resale. They have like a demo stripe that they print on all the books that you're for proofs. So this is a proof copy, and you'll see that it is nice. You can get some pretty good quality. There's different sheens, different types of paper that you can get. This one is I think coated white paper, so it's a little bit higher quality than some of the more basic ones. I have one more I can show you guys. This is another book printed through Amazon KDP. And this is a matte cover, so doesn't have the gloss finish, and the pages are non-coated, so it has more of like a newsprint quality, not as high of a contrast, but some people kind of like that feel. I personally like this feel, and yeah, so pretty cool that you can order books and make books um, with these digital tools. Yeah, so I think with that, if anybody has any questions, I know I kind of breezed through a lot of that stuff, but I kind of wanted to give you an idea of the type of projects you could make, starting with this software and then ending up with a tangible three-dimensional object. So not everything has to stay in the computer. You can use it. You can use the software to get stuff out of the computer. So yeah, let me see if there are any questions. Oh, great, awesome. So someone said that this is inspiring work. I hope it is. I hope that you'll look kind of the potential for the types of software that you have access to at DoSpace and the types of software that is freely available, and see really what is possible there. I keep trying to push all the limits of the software that I can within my own abilities, which you know, you learn more every day. My advice for kind of figuring out how the software works is just doing tutorials. There's so many tutorials online you can go to that will just show you little glimpses into how some of the software works, and then you can use that to determine if it's something you want to move forward with or apply it to some of that kind of project. So look at lots of that. Look at lots of those tutorials. Take classes at DoSpace. They have a lot of wonderful free classes from instructors who know what they're talking about and have done amazing things with this type of software. And then, yeah, then, you know, anytime you can get out and see digital art or any other kind of artwork that's made and has a kind of a digital tool in the process somewhere, that helps as well. There's lots of resources out there. So yeah, I thank you guys for coming. I don't have too much more, but I'm glad you guys checked it out. And please, if you have any questions for me, let me know. And I will answer them. I'll be around here for a couple more minutes and just hanging out. So thanks for being here. I guess maybe I have some questions for you guys. If anybody has maybe created something or created a 3D print or used a piece of software to actually make a tangible item, I'd love to hear about that in the chat or just even the question to talk about it. I know that there's actually a lot more possible than what I've showed you. There's lots of things happening that the people are making that are blowing my mind every time I look around. And there's a lot of software that is actually really not as user-friendly. A lot of coding, a lot of interesting stuff that's happening with coding and sculpture and things like that. So and interactive artwork as well, which I didn't really get into, but it's definitely possible. But yeah, I will just hang out. And if you have any questions, let me know.